Before the thunder of their hooves shook the world, they were nameless nomadic tribes, wandering the vast steppes of Central Asia. Their life was a harsh cycle of survival, where loyalty was to the clan, and the strongest determined the fate of all. Raiding and seizing women from rival clans was a familiar part of this unforgiving cycle of conflict. But then, one man appeared. His name was Temujin. The world would later know him as Genghis Khan. He united the warring tribes, forging them into one of the most effective war machines in history. He transformed scattered nomadic conflict into a systematic tool for building an empire. They created an empire stretching from the shores of the Pacific to the gates of Europe, an empire built on iron and terror. History tells of great battles, fortified cities razed, and mighty armies crushed under the hooves of the steppe horses. But alongside the destructions recorded in history, there was another weapon, a silent tool of terror with immense destructive power. It was an undeclared war waged against half of humanity, where the battlefield was the very bodies and souls of women. Their story is not carved on glorious monuments, but is submerged in the silent screams of history. To understand the scale of this tragedy, we must first understand the Mongol philosophy of war. For Genghis Khan and his generals, war was for the complete subjugation of the enemy's will. A simple and deadly message was always sent to the cities in their path: surrender or be annihilated. This was not merely a tactic, but a sophisticated tool of psychological warfare. Before the army appeared, their reputation preceded them. Stories of obliterated cities, of pyramids built from human skulls, were deliberately spread. The goal was to paralyze the enemy's will to resist before the battle even began. If a city opened its gates and accepted Mongol rule, its people might be spared. But if they resisted, the end was certain. When Mongol forces poured into a defiant city, they would carry out a methodical eradication. Men, soldiers, and anyone capable of bearing arms would meet a grim fate without mercy. Skilled artisans might be kept alive and deported to distant parts of the empire to serve Mongol needs. The rest of the city would be plundered, burned, and razed. In this hell on earth, women were considered spoils of war. Like gold, cattle, or weapons, they became the property of the victors. Ironically, Genghis Khan is credited with creating the Yasa, or the supreme Mongol legal code. The Yasa had very strict provisions, punishing certain crimes like adultery and theft with death. It promoted absolute loyalty and iron discipline within the army's ranks. However, this code created a clear moral boundary between us and them. These strict laws seemingly applied only to the Mongols themselves to maintain internal order. For the peoples deemed enemies, they were not protected by any law. It was this legal and ethical vacuum that paved the way for large-scale atrocities. The history of the Mongol conquests is marked by the fall of a series of great cities, each name a tragic chapter. When Genghis Khan's army advanced into Central Asia, the rich cities of the Silk Road became targets. Bukhara, a center of religion and learning, fell. The historian Juvaini recorded, "They came. In the main mosque, sacred texts were trampled under the hooves of Mongol horses, used as feeding troughs." Women were dragged away before the eyes of their families and subjected to acts of violation by the soldiers. In Samarkand, the scenario was even worse. After the city surrendered, the people were herded to an open plain. Women were taken en masse. Juvaini described them being treated like goods, divided among the soldiers. Perhaps no event was more symbolic than the fall of Baghdad to Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis. Baghdad was the heart of the Islamic world, a city of science, art, and philosophy for 500 years. In February 1258, Mongol forces breached the defenses. A weeks-long period of devastation began.
Hundreds of thousands were lost. The Tigris River ran red with blood, then black with the ink of countless books.
For the women of Baghdad, it was an endless nightmare. Thousands in the caliph's harem faced a horrific new reality.
Many threw themselves into the Tigris to preserve their honor. Throughout the streets, women were hunted and abducted. The historian Ibn al-Athir wrote, "The invaders committed acts that one is ashamed to speak of." Within the chaos of a captured city, there was a cold order. Women were part of an organized system of distributing spoils.
They were inspected and sorted by Mongol officials. Beauty, age, and skills determined their value.
A tenth of the best spoils, including high-born women, was reserved for the Great Khan and the royal family. The next share was divided among the senior commanders. The remaining women were divided among the soldiers as a reward. Those not chosen could be turned into labor slaves, or used for an even more horrific purpose, as human shields.
This brutality has left an indelible mark on the human genome and the social fabric of conquered peoples.
In 2003, a genetic study revealed a particular Y chromosome lineage unusually common from Asia to Europe. This lineage is found in about 8% of men in that region, roughly 16 million people today. Researchers traced its origin to a single man who lived in Mongolia about 1,000 years ago.
That man was almost certainly Genghis Khan, or one of his direct male descendants.
This is cold, biological proof of the scale of the system of forced concubinage that the Mongol rulers established. Thousands of women from conquered nations were forced to bear children for the victors, their legacy spreading with the conquering hooves. What makes this more complex is the role of women within Mongol society itself.
In stark contrast, Mongol noblewomen held respectable positions. They could own property and participate in important political decisions.
Figures like Börte, Genghis Khan's principal wife, and later regents like Töregene Hatun held immense power. This contrast shows the brutal treatment of foreign women was not misogyny, but a deliberate policy of war. It was a tool to assert dominance, break the enemy's social structure, and assimilate the conquered. The consequences lasted for generations. Children born of this violence grew up in a world of conflict. Fear and humiliation became part of the collective memory, reshaping social norms and concepts of honor. With the men gone and the women taken, the family unit, the foundation of society, was destroyed.
History is often written by the victors, in ink that praises glory and power. But in the silences between the pages, one can hear the echoes of the fates crushed under the empire's wheels. It is a legacy not carved in stone, but written in tears and blood, passed down in painful memory. It is the story of the women whose names are forgotten, but whose pain remains an unhealed scar on the face of history.